2025 off-season preview. We'll do the predictions once the lottery happens, just so then we have like a full picture. Either way, they just lost game 7 to the Denver Nuggets. Now, before we start, I'd like to hear what you guys have to say. What do you think needs to be done? Why? And let me hear your guys' rationale for it. Hit that like and subscribe button for more content like this, and go check out my multimedia journalism for USA Today's hoopshype.com. So let's get right into it. So what were some of the key themes this year before the first round exit? They were an elite defense, top 3. They didn't allow anybody to score on them. Zubac had an incredible season, became basically an all-star level player, one of the best centers in the league. And Chris Dunn, all defense. Nick Batum, solid. Kawhi Leonard showed he still got it. So did James Harden. I think Norman Powell took it to another level and showed that he was a guy that was, kind of held back. Jeff Van Gundy is a defensive whiz. And yeah, this is one of the league's oldest rotations, and 3 straight first round exits might signal stagnation, but I don't think their stats for the full season show the team's offense. I think their below average offense improved and was becoming really good towards the end of the season. They had an elite defense that was their foundational identity. They were able to be an efficient shooting team that weaponized floor spacing. Yeah, they lacked a secondary playmaker and there was some stagnated ball movement, but Zubac was able to dominate the board, and their impact defensively was this perimeter disruption that, yeah, they didn't have a true rim protector, which is something that they could look to get, but they were able just to suffocate you. And one might say they were an efficient scoring team on a low volume, and that they could use some more offensive creation. Looking at this team, assuming that James Harden opts in, they're going to be at $175.5 million in salary. They're 20 below the first apron, 32 below the second. They'll have the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, a couple trade exceptions of 6.5, 4.2, and 2.1 million, the veteran minimum, and the second round exception. Knowing that James Harden's more likely going to opt in, he still has that all-star level production. In the playoffs, he was an engine, and the Clippers are going to benefit from the continuity there. I think Norman Powell is either going to get an extension or he'll get traded. Yes, he had that all-star level. His extension with the CBA bump could seek 3 years, $92 million deal. A tradable contract at $20.5 million. That could be an ideal salary match for a splashy deal. We'll talk about that later. I do think Santi Aldama is like the only free agent, that big name free agent that they could sign and trade. Nick Batum, at 35, he could retire. I think the Clippers would like to retain him at like 4.9 million. He's a guy who can guard 1 through 4, played 78 games, shot well at low volume. Amir Coffey, he had a late season injury, and I think the team would keep him if he's a veteran minimum. I don't think they're pressed if he's not. And Ben Simmons, if he doesn't go to the Lakers, he stays with the Clippers. I think he just returns on another minimum to continue the reclamation. But I wouldn't hold your breath on that one. It's not like he's going to change anything. I mean, this is a guy that in the playoffs, played 5 games, 8 minutes a night. Yeah. Former number 1 pick. And was just 18 games, 16 minutes a night. That ship has sailed, ladies and gentlemen. Look, they need a backup center. Zubac, especially in the playoffs, 37 minutes a night. No real backup minutes logged. Eubanks is on a unguaranteed deal, so they can just... And I think if you look in free agency, or even using the trade exception, some of the bigs that I personally think that would be worth going after are guys along the lines of a Goga Bitsadeh would be really cool. I don't think, a Xavier Tillman or a Bismack would really do anything to move the needle in the draft. A Ryan Kalkbrenner, a John Beringer would really, I think, be maybe a bit of a needle movers. Like, I want a shot blocker, but I don't want to spend a bunch of money on it. I understand being kind of hesitant on that side of things. But if we look just at the current market, I know it's not going to be easy to go out and get somebody like that. Robert Williams is injury prone. Larry Nance is undersized and more of like a small ball switch big. John Collins is too expensive. He's going to, accept that. Nikola Vucevic kind of could help you guys. I think Vooch Zubats, I kind of like that. Or a Bobby Portis. You could trade for Vooch or sign Bobby Portis because I think Bobby Portis is going to decline that. I think those are two bigs that they should be interested in. Clint Capella, I think, is over the hill, and he isn't going to give you what you need. I kind of want a scoring big to help you out. And outside of that, yeah, I think if you don't like those options, the free agents aren't going to be any better than those that you're just getting further down the board. Now, a secondary ball handler, they were the 7th worst in assist rate. They lack creators behind James Harden. I think that, no offense to Chris Dunn, but bringing in Tyus Jones or even taking a chance on like a Kellyan Hayes if you feel like that can go. They do have the 30th pick, which I think if you look at the options, I don't think Rasheer Fleming is going to be there. I think big swing if you want to find like your Al Horford, Ethan Almanza, guy who the motor is kind of the question with him, but he's a switch big who can stretch the floor, has some passing ability, and can play around the rim. Just a low usage, smart big who can develop behind Zubats without much pressure. I think the other ones could be, you got Jaden Bradley, who was like a top recruit, two-way guy who's just improved, really good backup point guard who I think can come in day one. I think Michael Ruzic, who's a toolsy international Dario Saric-esque player, could maybe be like a 3-and-D guy. My favorite would be Cedric Coward, who's a do-it-all glue guy, great shooter, connective, kind of like a Batum light, who could help right away, 3-4, maybe be a big 2. Outside of that, I think Alex Condon, who is kind of like a Mason Plumlee, rugged rebounder, has some passing chops, good motor, day one potential backup big with some physicality. Milos Uzan, crafty pick and roll initiator who's got a good high assist rate, good decision making. Tyrese Proctor, another one who can play the 1, the 2, even some 3, and his shooting's gotten better at a low usage. If Isaiah Evans is around, I think that's the one that they could like. I really like Quincy Ballard. He's a traditional drop big, but he could be someone in the second round. Now, Darian Williams could be a rebounding big that does the dirty work. Good feel on both ends. But besides that, yeah, I think anybody else, they would hope that somebody falls to them if they're trying to fill stuff up with, a trade, or not a trade, with a draft pick. So I think the big trade player that they could look to use is Norman Powell is, I think, the likely trade candidate due to the fact that you're either going to extend him or you're going to look to use him as your asset to upgrade. Now, and you can use, I think if you use the mid-level exception, you probably trade him and then you look for him to be used. I think Bogdanovich could be moved, especially with his contract being, kind of flexible. As Bogdan, right there, they got guys just under $40 million of tradable salary, plus with the exception, like $40 million in salaries. So like we said, they need to add a backup big, add a secondary playmaker. Definitely trade Bogey if they're going to extend Powell, or trade Powell and Bogey and get some financial flexibility, fill their space with the mid-level exception, as they're one of the few contenders with the access to the full mid-level exception, and draft, players that are rotation ready. So obviously, despite no longer having Paul George, I think the Clippers were able to remain competitive thanks to their internal growth, top 3 defense, or resurgent years from Harden and Kawhi, and then breakout years for Powell and Zubats. You just have to worry about age, stagnation on offense. They have they just came off of 3 straight first round exits, and this front office is gotta get something done. The tools are there with cap flexibility, draft picks, and tradable contracts. They have the full mid-level exception with the right big ball handler and some decisions. This is a team that can go from being a contender or just another 50 plus win squad that has yet another early playoff exit. Before we leave, let's just talk real quickly about maybe some types of players that they could go after. Just off the dome here, I think maybe if you really, really believe that you need a guard, Anthony Simons is the one that makes the most sense to me. I assume they wouldn't want Norman Powell. It would probably be a Bogdan, and I would assume maybe you would hope either young guys, any of the players that you would want to move off of in terms of salaries. Because does Kobe Brown stay? Is he part of the future? Because you could use your trade exception by trading Bogdan, and then trade exception and throw in a Drew Eubanks, and that would get the deal done. So Anthony Simons for Drew Eubanks, Bogdan, a pick, and a trade exception. I know Blazers fans would scream no at that. You could think a very similar package, but you would have to throw on a little bit more because of his salary. CJ McCollum makes 30. So Bogdan and Bogey make, not Bogdan and Bogey, Bogdan and Drew make combined 20 million. You throw in, I think, 6.5. So you're about $4 million. So you can eat that $4 million, or you could throw in a Kobe Brown or a Cam Christie to get over the edge there, or Chris Dunn to get that deal done, to get a guy like CJ McCollum if you want. Now, if we're looking at like bigs, we said Goga, which again, I think using Bogdan or Norman, the biggest name, a Miles Bridges is another one you can bring in. I wouldn't bring in a Miles Bridges, but he's one you could do. So I want to hear your thoughts.